Good evening, everybody. I'm Margaret Miller. I'm the director of the Institute for Research in Art at the University of South Florida. Here we are here tonight to have a conversation about Skyway, a contemporary collaboration. Museums are capacious spaces for personal as well as communal experiences. Our COVID isolation makes the coming together of these four museums, regional museums, that are offering opportunities for us to look at some of the most talented artists in our region. Likely the convenience of virtual panels will continue as discussions work very well in this format, and so we welcome you all tonight. The exhibition Skyway is in its second iteration. The first round was the Ringling Museum, the Museum of Fine Arts in St. Petersburg, the Tampa Museum of Art, and this is our first participation in this collaborative project. There are 8 artists on display at the Contemporary Art Museum out of a total of 49 participating at the other institutions. And tonight the conversation will be with Danny Dobrow, Babette Hirschberger, Akiko Kontani, and Casey McDonough. The curators at each of these institutions have come together and collaborated to develop this exhibition. Joanna Robotham at the Tampa Museum of Art, Christopher Jones and Ola Wusik at the Ringling Museum, and of course our own Sarah Howard, who will be leading the discussion tonight, and I will introduce her in a moment. She's the curator of public art and social practice at the Contemporary Art Museum. A guest curator worked with our curators in the region, Claire Tacone. The exhibition at the Contemporary Art Museum is supported by Lee and Victor Levengood Endowment, Stanton Store Embrace the Arts Foundation, the Gobioff Foundation, and Dr. Alan Root. And I must always congratulate the staff of the Contemporary Art Museum for working so wonderfully with these artists to install their installations. So I hope you enjoy the conversation tonight, and I look forward to seeing you all in the museum to view our part of the exhibition, and maybe we'll meet up at some of the other sites. So it is my pleasure to introduce to you Sarah Howard, curator of public art and social practice at the University of South Florida Contemporary Art Museum. Sarah.
Thank you, Margaret. Good evening, and thank you for joining us this evening for the panel discussion with Akiko Kontani, Babette Hirschberger, Casey McDonough, and Danny Dobrow. I'm delighted to be in conversation with 4 of the talented artists exhibiting in USF CAM's Skyway 2021, a contemporary collaboration. As I introduce tonight's program, we'd like to share some images of the installation at USF CAM for those of you who haven't had a chance to visit the exhibition. As Margaret mentioned, Skyway is a unique cultural alliance and partnership between 4 cultural institutions celebrating contemporary artists living and working in the Tampa Bay region. The exhibiting artists were selected through an open call process initiated in 2019 for artists residing in Hillsborough, Manatee, Pasco, and Pinellas and Sarasota counties. From over 300 submissions, the curatorial team chose approximately 60 artists to conduct studio visits with, and then made a final selection of 49 artists to be included in the 2020 exhibition, which was, as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, rescheduled to 2021. I wish to extend special recognition to all the artists who submitted to the Skyway open call. It was a true pleasure to learn more about the artists living and working in our area. I'd also like to acknowledge our partner museums, the Museum of Fine Arts St. Petersburg, the John and Mabel Ringling Museum of Art, and the Tampa Museum of Art, and thank their leadership and staff for their collaborative efforts to organize Skyway across the 4 venues. I'd also like to thank the 2021 curatorial team of Catherine Pill, Joanna Robotham, Ola Wilsick, Chris Jones, and our guest juror, Claire Tancon, for their dedicated contributions to the selection process and coordination of the illustrated catalog, which includes representation of all the Skyway 2021 artists. And I would be remiss without expressing gratitude to all the members of CAM's team who conjure all the magic behind the scenes to facilitate our exhibitions and programs. These conversations continue to provide valuable opportunities to connect with our community of artists, advocates, and audiences. And we couldn't do it without critical funding from the USF College of the Arts and our private donors, including the Gobial Foundation, the Victor and Lee Levengood Foundation Endowment, and the Stanton Store Embrace the Arts Foundation, along with Dr. Alan Root. I invite our viewers to add any questions you might have into the Q&A window on Zoom or the comments section on Facebook Live, and we'll be happy to get to those towards the end of the conversation. The panelists' bios will be posted in the chat for reference, and I would encourage you to use speaker view while listening to this conversation. It's in the upper right corner of your screen, and it'll allow you to see who's speaking in a larger format. Also, live transcription is available at the bottom of your screen for viewers using the Zoom platform. If you haven't had a chance to view the exhibition in person, there is a navigable virtual model of the museum, photo documentation, and a PDF of the exhibition brochure on the exhibition webpage at cam.usf.edu under exhibitions and then Skyway 2021. I hope you'll all have a chance to visit the 4 concurrent Skyway 2021 exhibitions at all the partner museums. Before I introduce the artists on our panel, I'd like to take a moment to reflect and acknowledge the traditional, ancestral, unceded territory of the Seminole, Tocobago, and Calusa tribes' native lands that those of us on Florida's Gulf Coast are learning, working, and organizing today. As a current occupant and legacy of the settler colonial state, I believe it's important we recognize the inequitable structures and systems present in these spaces that act as barriers to racial, social, and environmental justice, and commit to moving beyond words and statements into action that embodies a commitment to human rights, justice, and cultural equity for all. Now to introduce our featured Skyway 2021 artists and hear more about their work. Akiko Katani has a distinguished career and practice incorporating textiles. Katani expands her exploration of the crochet stitch and her monumental installation, Red Falls, as a transformative act honoring the strength and resiliency of women. Her innovative material use and massive installations highlight the repetitive and patient nature of women's domestic labor. Akiko lives and works in Gulfport, Florida. Babette Hirschberger is intrigued with how structures in the built environment contrast with the natural world. She works intuitively to create abstract compositions with minimal color and form to emphasize surface. Using collage to build her boldly colored compositions of shifting planes, her works suggest objects, structures, and shadows as interruptions within the landscape. Babette works and lives in St. Petersburg, Florida. Casey McDonough weaves intersections between art, nature, and science to mine the contradictions present in our human experience with the natural world by investigating the transformative and transcendent potential of material, and generates intimate singular objects as well as expansive site-specific installations, intertwining delicate and intricate components into larger constellations. McDonough's smaller gestures invite close observation, while broader connections offer immersion in a complex web of spatial exploration. Casey lives and works in St. Petersburg, Florida, where he teaches art and 3D design at Shorecrest Preparatory School. Danny Dobro's recent work focuses on the field of craft, and specifically pottery, by reinterpreting the tools and equipment essential to the process and imagining new forms that emphasize practice over objects. Influenced by art history, craft theory, modern construction materials and techniques, consumerism, and his role within it, Danny brings a sense of humor to his approach to represent a working pottery studio of fictional artist Martin Martin. Danny lives and works in St. Petersburg, Florida. And if all of our artists would turn on their cameras, I'm so excited to speak with you all tonight because I have a background in studio art and I'm always excited to talk with artists about the process and material investigations that have guided their practice and embed meaning within the work. So Akiko, let's start with you. With your recent work, you use crochet stitches to transform plastic bags into these stunning, immense forms that command the viewer's attention. In Red Falls, soft blanketed panels cascade from the wall and spill onto the floor, inviting further contemplation and appreciation for your investment of labor. Your work in the previous iteration of Skyway also used the same stitching process. Would you talk to us more about how you developed this process and the material use and how it has expanded into new forms and meaning within your work?
Yes. And hello, Sarah, and hello, the rest of the artists that are on Zoom this evening. First of all, I would like to say that the base matter that I use for Red Falls is called polyethylene, and it comes in the form of a 45-degree trash bag, a plastic trash bag. Now, I fashioned this by use of the color red, which signals women's issues. And of course, the use of scale, it is larger than life. It confronts you in a very dramatic way. And I also use the method of crochet. Now, all of this uses the ideation of women's work. The crochet, happens to be associated with women's work and items that are made for comfort. Now, the color, the scale, and the method of crochet, all of these, they resonate together. And the use of what I call the ideation, which is really sometimes called the concept, is really the fuel that propels the work forward. Meaning, while I am working very patiently crocheting my panels, I constantly think of what the color adds to the final work, what the scale adds to the final work, what the method of crochet, adds to the final work. And it really is about the resilience and the beauty of women that in our society that have been abused. It's just amazing to me that women, even though they have been abused, they have to go out and work. They have to continue living. They have children to take care of. They have a home to, tend to. And so it really is about women's beauty in the face of, having such a difficult situation.
You've also mentioned that the works really serve for you as a kind of journal of recording your emotions while you're working. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yes, of course. The process of crochet is methodical and it is very labor intensive. And to crochet a piece of that scale and size, it takes quite a bit of commitment. And so while I am doing the process, I think about the daily chores that women do to keep a home running. And it really, it mimics that daily repetitive type of work that women do to keep the house running. Now, why do women do this? Because they love their family. And why do I do the work that I do? It's because I love doing my artwork and I have an image in my mind that I'm working towards, and I really want to see it realized. And so I will patiently and methodically spend months and months working so I can realize the end image.
That's beautiful. Thank you. And I imagine this work has quite a lot of emotional turmoil embedded in it, being created over this past year. But what I think so smart about this work is how, and besides it being just absolutely gorgeous and kind of, it really makes you want to be enveloped in the work. You get, you're just so, it's so striking when you are confronted by it, but it's so soft and sort of enveloping that you just kind of want to lay down in it too. But I think this way that you have developed of working both in the work in Skyway 2017 and this Skyway is like, it's able to expand and contract as needed. And it has this sort of pliability to the material and the form of installation.
Yes, it also, I think, mirrors the fact that women do that. If they have an expansion of their children, for instance, if they have, one child, it's one way of working. If they have four, then they have to expand themselves. But they're constantly soft, or they're expected, they're expected to be soft and, to absorb a great deal of the environment. And so this work really has all of that. And in other words, as I am working and stitching every day, I think about all of these, things that women do. And also almost everything in the work signals no value. We do not value women's work in the home. There's no price tag for it, but can you imagine if we did not have that? We didn't have that love and care. Our children would not go to college. They would not achieve, what they have to achieve. And so this work, particularly the work in the other sky, we also had thoughts of that. But as I was working on that, I really thought much more about women. And so I decided for this work, I wanted to have it red, which signals women's, issues and, literature, everything has to do with red. It signals women's issues. And so that really is the ideation, the fuel really that propels it forward. And you did mention the fact that the stitches, yes, I go through all kinds of, as we all do. You're happy one day, joyful, another day you're angry, another day you feel frustrated. And of course, as we were going through the lockdown, my God, we have experienced emotions that we have never experienced before. At least I have. And so all of that, all of the stitches are uneven and they're exaggerated. And that's what I want to show. I really want to show the signature of how I am feeling each day as I stitch.
Well, it's very effective. Thank you for that further explanation. Let's move on to Babette for a moment. Babette, your paintings and collages use shifting planes of bold colors and hard edge forms to articulate abstract compositions that suggest structures from the built environment juxtaposed within the landscape. Can you speak to us about your sources of inspiration for this work and describe the process of building up these subtle and sublime surfaces?
Hi, Sarah. How are you?
Great.
Firstly, I just want to say thank you to everyone involved with Skyway 2021. It's a real honor to be included, and I think you guys have done an amazing job putting our particular exhibition together. I haven't had a chance to see any of the others yet, but I'm looking forward to it. My process is greatly influenced by my own driving about, my own interaction with the world. I am constantly seeing things in the landscape that appeal to me. I often stop and take photographs, and often it is structures, buildings, signage against sky or another building, a lot of layering happening. And if I had to identify where that's coming from, I've had a lifelong love of architecture and design. I studied graphic design, and I grew up in rural Indiana farmland. So there's a high suspicion that a lot of my interest in form and structure comes from these clusters of outbuildings that appear on the landscape in the context of farms. I was surrounded by farms. I didn't grow up in one, but those buildings, from tiny little buildings to gigantic buildings and silos, all created like their own cityscape in the rural farm context. My surfaces are coming from on my paintings are coming from an earlier body of work that involved me scavenging for scraps of interesting material on the street. I've always been someone who tends to pick up things from the world around me, little collections of stones and rocks and various things. And in early Art Basel years in Miami, there were a lot of muralists in town in the wee hours painting, and we would often go out and photograph them and take get overview of what they were doing and watch the progress of those murals as they emerged. So I collected a lot of the materials they left behind. They tended to be very dirty. They would leave scraps of cardboard with edges spray painted, etc. And I made a lot of collages with those materials. At some point along the way, I felt the need to shift the painting I had been doing, and I took a cue from that collage work and I started painting my substrate, my canvas or my wood panel surface with paper. That paper is a fully resolved composition unto itself. And then on top of that, I start a painting that has an interaction or a conversation with the lower composition. So they're sort of working in tandem with one another. My painting, although often feels somewhat color field in its coloration, there could be 5 reds in one passage of red. So I create a lot of depth just amongst color shifts. And then there's a sanding or an abrasive process that reveals that lower conversation, that lower composition in the painting to the final surface. It brings it forward almost like a drawing and helps illustrate those two compositions that are working in tandem.
That's lovely. I wish that our viewers could see how subtle these surfaces are and these how these layers sort of become integrated within and work with one another with these subtle kind of gestures and geometric planes that you create. Can you talk a little bit about sort of the irregular like framing that you use for your canvases?
You mean the
Irregular shapes? Yeah, they're not just, you know, some of them are not just straight up squares or rectangles.
Some of those forms, which are irregularly shaped, are informed by the materials that I'm using. I do a lot of work with cardboard boxes, so they have tabs and folds and slots in them. So some of those become part of the composition because an arc becomes a way to direct the eye into another part of the piece. Some of them, I'm sure, go back to these structures that I'm always looking at. I take photographs of what I call dead signs. And those are signs that were just sort of a profile is left behind after a business moves out and they take out the information area. I have a huge love of billboards, also dead billboards or billboards with no message at the moment, not being rented. So it's those structures and those pieces of almost language, but really architecture that are what inform a lot of what drives me. And I do think it goes back very distant into my childhood. Even we had a small little, you can call it a cottage, but it was a mobile home with an attached structure at a lake in rural Indiana when I was a kid. And a lot of the vernacular of that structure is embedded in my work. And it was very angular and very circular and et cetera.
Yeah. It's always interesting to me when you have that moment where you kind of realize that's where your influence is from, or, you know, is it like a slow kind of realization, or is it something that you just kind of clicked and you were like, oh, wait a minute.
For me, it came from dialogue with other artists. It was a very controlled group where we tried to understand what was informing our work. And this group met over many weeks. And that's how I uncovered what I think is the story behind the
Oh, that's
visual
so
aspect.
interesting. Yeah. That's really interesting. Like just having those conversations, how that can draw that out of your practice and your thinking. So you also have these very kind of distinct but interrelated series. You have the interruptions, and then you have the tidbits. And so I'm just wondering how you think about these different series. Is it really more about the materiality and how you're constructing them, or is it just a way for you to kind of organize some of this?
No, I think that they're a language. The tidbits are a more dimensional language than the paintings. Hoping to sort of in the future bring the two together and make all of the work more dimensional than it has been. But I think it's a language. In some respects, the tidbits feel more structural, more like an object. The paintings almost feel like they're a detail of that object because it's a tighter composition, an even more spare composition often. But I do feel that they're almost one body of work, especially because in both scenarios there is that collage element happening.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Thank you so much. And now we're going to move on to Casey. Casey, your work integrates delicate handcrafted clay structures assembled from multiple parts, which are suspended and connected within a web of decorative material elements to create a volumetric and spatial constellation, amplified and echoed through shadow, reflection, and repetition. There was such a sense of discovery coming into the gallery to see the progression of your work over the course of the installation as you spun this web of wonder in the gallery corner. Could you walk us through your approach for creating these site-specific works and your use of both handcrafted and consumer-based materials?
Sure. So I should say up front that like Danny, I'm a ceramics person through and through, and I love the ceramics process. And it's one of those things you can spend a lifetime exploring and never get close to the bottom of. So the structures in the images you're showing are actually made from ceramic, and they're held together with wire. I make those first before I ever see the space. So the process in a nutshell is pretty simple. I make a colored slip that's like a liquid clay, and I use kitchen twine, and I dip the twine in the slip a number of times. So I have these kind of sticks, if you will. And then when I fire them, then the cotton burns away and I'm left with ceramic tubes. And it's taken me a little while, but they're extremely strong. And then I start to build them. And so I build them at home. I filled up my whole truck with these funny ceramic structures and drove across the Howard Franklin. That was kind of fun. But then the other element are really, purchased elements, decorative materials that you mentioned. And for me, this is kind of the most exciting part, which is I guess you could just call it shopping. I guess I really like shopping. But going out in the world, and if you can open up your mind to the idea that anything is an art material, it gets really exciting. So I love walking through places like Home Depot, but thinking about things I can incorporate into my installations. You know, obviously Michael's and Joann's, but looking for things that aren't for some sort of specific project, but instead assembling a box of materials that I can bring with me that match maybe my color choices. The graphic elements are vinyl. That's just a skill I've developed over the years because I found painting a little bit hard for myself. So I find the most excitement in trying to assemble a number of materials and then bringing them to the space. You had asked me when I sat down with you that one day that you were there for a while if I made drawings or anything, and I don't anymore. I tried that for a while, but I just felt like it was really hard to even see a space, then make a plan with a drawing, and then try and stay true or loyal to that drawing in any way. So I kind of set that aside, and I try and make extra time to visit a space with nothing else in there. So you guys welcomed me in as soon as the other show was down, and I saw the space and kind of understood the dimensions and geometry. And then I just showed up with those materials. I did some of the cutting at home, but a lot of the cutting happened on site. You know, that's for the graphic elements. And then I just start to really imagine what can happen in the space. So your space is great. The ceilings are, I think, 16 feet tall, something like that. Definitely the biggest volume of space I've ever had the opportunity to work with, which is exciting. And I think about it like a process of three-dimensional drawing that takes place over a period of, I don't know, I think this took me 40 or 50 hours if I had to guess, which is good for me. I mean, I've spent a lot more time on even smaller versions of this, so I'm getting faster at it.
Yeah, you really seemed like you had your process down, you know,
I
like,
did, yeah. I did, and I had help. You know, I have to thank my wife and my good friend Ariana, who came on separate days to, you know, do some stickering and things like that. It would be harder to do by myself. In the past, I've done this with student helpers at the university level, and I've really been able to do a lot with, you know, those kids that are enthused, and I can say, this is your task for the next 5 days, and they come in way more enthused than I am and help me make something bigger. I'm not afraid to accept help with these things. I think it's totally fair in this particular instance.
well, I also think it's just, it's a little bit like creating a three-dimensional puzzle too, because you're having to sort of build it in space, and you've only got a certain amount of mobility once it starts to all come together. And I think that was really interesting to kind of see these added elements keep coming in that just sort of like started making it even more and more kind of web-like, or, you know.
Right.
And
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, it really draws the viewer in, you know.
It built itself over a period of days, and I get that same Christmas feeling that you guys did when I show up, because if I work for 8 hours and I leave, I don't leave with a great image of what I did. I'm just tired. So I come in the morning and see it fresh, and that's exciting. But you're right. The first thing I did was commit to where those ceramic objects are going to hang in the space, and because it's all tied together, I pretty much couldn't move them. I saved a few to add in later. But yeah, it builds itself slowly, and it's exciting for me too to see it build that way.
And I don't know if it's apparent to viewers, but like the sort of decal of dots that is on the sides of the walls on either side are really replicating shadows that are being created. So it's really highlighting those shadows, but like in this reflective vinyl material. So it becomes even more amplified and echoed, which I thought was brilliant.
Thank you very much.
So we talked a little bit about your interest in science. And so could you talk about sort of that inspiration behind the work, about kind of creating these, like.
Sure, yeah, I totally can. I wanted to mention this really, Babette did a great job talking about her formal elements. And I just want to say, I studied ceramics, and ceramics is just heavy. Like that's what people think of as ceramics is heavy, right? And years and years ago, I set myself to this task of trying to make mass with ceramics out of volume instead of weight, right? So in other words, larger sculptures that had mass without weight. And that seems silly. It's like this funny little personal challenge I made to myself, because in clay, we're like, ah, whatever, it's heavy, but if we can get enough people, we'll move it and nobody will know. So I've been working on this kind of like sort of this gaseous volumetric thing for a long time. And I like the space you gave me is kind of the biggest and best I've been able to work into. So my first love was science and nature. I was convinced I would save the sea turtles. I didn't get around to it yet, but I went to school for marine biology. I always made art, but I was and am obsessed with the natural world, and on a small scale. So I went to school for marine biology, and I finished that degree, but I studied art at the same time. And when I left, I really pursued the art, the art experience. I went to graduate school, etc. My love of science just manifests in like what I like to do with my everyday life and my kids and stuff like that. But I still have this, I'm still reading all the time, reading science journals, learning about what it is that we're discovering about the world and space around us. And I'm full of all of this visual information, right? So all of these textbooks for physics and chemistry classes. And I really couldn't tell you a lot about organic chemistry, but I could do a lot of the drawings from memory because they stick with me. So a lot of that percolated into my artwork. Years ago, I kind of got away from doing some of the more standard ceramic stuff, pottery and figures and all that. And I started exploring these molecular structures. That was the first thing that I did in clay that was really science-based. And it sprang from there. But I started thinking about the idea of similar or congruent structures at a small scale and a big scale. So it might be like cellular or subatomic structures that somehow mirror space scale structures. And that just became this metaphor in my work that I've played with for years. So the title of work references the cosmic collider, which is this idea that scientists can use all of space as a particle accelerator to study science. And I just thought that was a pretty interesting metaphor for how quickly we seem to be understanding the world around us in 2021. Yeah, I think maybe I referenced what you wanted me to there.
Yeah, but it's beautiful in the work because it manifests in these like micro and sort of macro ways where it's like
Right.
this large expanse, but you can kind of focus in on these smaller connections or intimate connections that are happening, and juxtapositions between the material and the cut, this kind of shiny, glittery, reflective, quality. So it's really effective.
The material juxtaposition, I'm glad you mentioned that because it's something I think about. So if I'm out in the world and I'm looking all around me as potential art materials, whatever they are, we humans have made so much amazing stuff, not always good, but we're full of all of the sort of sparkly wonder we could possibly ever want because it's available at the craft store. My son, my 6-year-old, asked me this remarkable question just yesterday. He looked at me dead serious. He goes, "Papa, where does plastic come from?" And it just like blew my mind because I hadn't really stopped to think about that these are all these man-made materials. So I tried to explain it to him. That's a whole different story, but it made me think a lot about what I'm doing, right? So working with clay and then really finding these really slick, highly manufactured surfaces and then treating them perfectly and exacting as if I am producing a sign for a business or something like that. I really like that juxtaposition happening.
Yeah, it's great. It's really effective. Well, hopefully our next generation may not know where plastic comes from, but they'll still be dealing with it.
They'll still be dealing with it. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Danny, you're up. So Danny, you've developed new work for Skyway that expands on your ongoing conceptual discourse with the field of craft and with a playful interrogation of the cultural hierarchies between the disciplines of pottery, fine art, and design. You created a fabricated narrative of fictional artist Martin Martin and reimagined his career through a series of new works known as Hyperpots. Would you explain the Hyperpots movement and expand on your conceptual framework and use of appropriation for this installation and the accompanying catalog?
Sure, yeah. First, something, thanks everyone for tuning in. Excited to do this and talk with all you guys about art. So this piece is really the fourth iteration of a series of work that's about ceramics, kind of, but like about ceramics, but not really using clay. And so each one finds a way to kind of pinpoint an element of the medium to talk about, and then kind of uses like direct simile as whether it's metaphor or not metaphor, whether it's like a material change or a technique change or a process change to kind of highlight something about it. So for this, I took this kind of movement in ceramics called Hyperpots, which is a new movement that's kind of about very Instagrammable and internet palatable pottery and vessels that use extremely goopy and glazy and colorful surfaces and colors. Yeah, so that's what this one's about. In the past, I've kind of talked about wood firing, whether it was like a performance or a video, and I've used cardboard to kind of talk about pottery and hand-built pottery and spray paint to kind of reference glazes. So that's kind of where I'm coming from with this installation. And yeah, so in terms of appropriation, I mean, there's a lot kind of going on. I was thinking about a lot when I created this installation and started on this piece about 1.5 years ago. And I just really am interested in the idea of appropriation in the field of contemporary art, and the idea of kind of taking another person's work or ideas and kind of running with it, going with it, stealing it. And so this piece was really a wild exploration of that. And all of the pots that I used that you can see on the table are either made by other artists or made by craftsmen or designers from history that I went and bought from a antique shop and then kind of reglazed. So nothing in there is really made by me, which I think is a really interesting kind of place to start making art. And then the other thing you brought up is the catalog. So the catalog, which I don't know if there's a picture of, is kind of really what the whole installation's about. And it's really everything you see kind of could not exist just for you could experience the whole piece kind of just reading the catalog. And the catalog is images of kind of the process that these pots kind of went throughout the story of Martin Martin, who is this artist I kind of fabricated. Yeah, so.
So do you want to tell us about Martin Martin?
Sure, yeah.
And
so,
how Martin Martin's career has evolved?
Right, yeah, so I was interested in the idea of using personal history to talk about art, and artists who use their own personal history kind of as source material for their work. I was particularly influenced by a piece by John Bolasari called The Cremation Project, where he took all of his previous paintings and put them in a crematorium and burned them. And then that was like this like rebirth of a conceptual art piece about kind of him moving forward. But I kind of came up against the fact that like I only have one story and one history to kind of work with. So a natural place to go was just creating an entirely new artist. So the kind of where this piece starts is just creating a new artist with a new history that he can then use his own history as he sees fit. So this artist's name is Martin Martin, which is kind of a play on two of my favorite artists, Agnes Martin and Martin Creed, so first and last name of Martin. And then he is a potter who developed kind of these forms and was really interested in the design of making functional tableware. Grew disillusioned with that, reglazed them all white as a way to kind of like conceptually restart his practice, and then was taken over and inspired by Instagram and kind of the new contemporary field of ceramics, and took all of his white pots and re-hyperified them, which is kind of the surfaces that you see now. Yeah, so hopefully that kind of makes a little bit of sense.
Well, it makes sense to me. I hope it makes
Good.
sense to our viewers. So in this catalog, we have a full exhibition catalog that, you know, gives like a timeline for this history that is conveyed through the viewer, through the catalog. But you also have incorporated another layer to the work, a sound element. And I thought it was really interesting how you talked about the sound element as being part of our world, and sort of bringing it back to the reality of our space. And so could you talk a little bit about what the sounds are made of and sort of your thinking behind that?
Yeah, so the sound was very new for me. I have very little experience working with kind of sonic art, and I wanted to incorporate it into the piece, and I didn't quite know how. So I was playing with different ideas, and I ended up just recording 3 different instances around my life and house related to these ceramic objects. And one was making coffee in the morning, one was cooking dinner at night, and then one was the actual process of spraying foam on one of the pots. And those 3 sounds kind of, I guess, were just things that I thought about in relation to kind of the use and history of these ceramic objects. So I recorded it and then played it back inside of the piece and recorded it using a different device within the piece to kind of create like an echoing, almost like abstract sound of that original recording. And then now I'm playing it in the installation through the pot. So you can kind of like hear it slightly, and you can kind of dip in and hear it. And I kind of think of it as like the history of these pots kind of coming through, like the story of these pots changing over these years. And this is kind of their like original use or form or kind of story coming through. Yeah.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, and I also think about like, I'm really interested in the idea of kind of like installations that play with what is and isn't part of kind of the art experience. And so I think of it as like part of experiencing this piece involves pretending that Martin Martin is the artist, and part of experiencing this piece involves acknowledging that Martin Martin is not real, and that there's kind of like places to go, like knowing everything and then like not knowing everything. Yeah.
Yeah, and so you've often used a lot of industrial or sort of regular kind of consumer materials in your work. And so I'm curious about, these are made with, I think, silly string and expanding insulation foam and popcorn sealing spray. And
Mhm.
so did you have to do a lot of experimentation with sort of getting these like hyper pot glazed surfaces that you were looking for, using these like non-traditional, I mean, like silly strings, like, it's not the easiest thing in the world to control.
No, right.
And neither is expanding foam for that
Right,
matter.
for sure.
It's kind of like you spray it and you're like, oh my God, is it going to keep going?
Yeah. No, I mean, it was definitely, I did not do a lot of experimentation, to be honest. I kind of just went for it, and it kind of worked out. Me and my partner were in the backyard just putting a pot on a banding wheel and spinning it and just spraying things at it. And it worked out. And it's inspired by kind of these materials and ceramics that do look like, primarily, I would say the expanding foam kind of has this like growthy quality. And there are definitely glaze chemists who know more than me, but there are materials you can add that kind of make things kind of blow up and expand and get all flaky and crumbly and goopy. which is similar. And I mean, to be honest, I think that a lot of artists working in kind of the field of hyperpots are inspired by those materials kind of to begin with. And, you know, it's hard to say kind of where it starts, but like the field, kind of the rise of plastics and extremely bright colors and fabrication techniques in contemporary art, I think, use those materials to start with, and then kind of ceramic artists come behind and get inspired by it. So it's all one big kind of
Cycle.
hard,
Yeah.
hard to say where it
Yeah.
starts. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you had a lot of fun with the work, and it's really very fun conceptually as well. If you read the catalog, which I encourage our viewers to do, it's interesting to read through the history, and you can kind of see these little bits and pieces that are taken from different writing about different artists, contemporary artists.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I want to open up our conversation a little bit to talk to all the artists now that we've gotten kind of a understanding of each of their works in the show and their practice in general, and talk a little bit more about what it means to be an artist working at this moment in time. Over this past period of intense isolation and social distancing that we've experienced in the past 15 months, which we were all thrust into situations that most of us were completely unprepared for. Now, many of us are just beginning to acclimate to living with the pandemic and reconnecting with the creative community at large and in person. For some, this has been the most challenging and transformational period in our lives, coping with personal and collective loss and grief, and finding comfort and hope and resilience with our community. It may be too early to fully reflect on this significant time in our lives, but I'm curious to inquire about your thoughts on how the pandemic and the events over the past year have impacted your practice.
Well, for me, there were two things, and you can cut me off if I go on too long. I'll try to be brief. For one thing, I seem to have lost what I call my imaginative muscle. Without the stimulation of seeing artwork, talking to artists, going to openings, it seemed to have slackened during this period. Another thing that I had time for was to introspect about my career, and I am older, I think, than all of you here. And so I had a lot of time and a lot of history doing my work. And I found that the deepest images, it's sort of like a code. And I use this time to decode my images. Now, I've found throughout my career or my life as an artist, when I went with my instincts, that's the time I really, really hit home. I mean, it was just wonderful. And now I am really feeling wonderful. I go with my instincts. I don't question what I'm doing. And that is such a freeing feeling. And so I use the materials I do very freely. I have lots of questions and criticism from people, but I'll say, well, I'm sorry. This is what works for me, and this is the texture I need to do my work. And so I just want to end by saying that this is why artists are so, art making is so seductive, because we have this, I find that we have a decoding mechanism. We're trying to find out what it is that makes our art work. And it takes such a long time to figure out what it is. And that's why art making is so seductive, and why people always wonder, how can artists do what they do? And, they sacrifice so much. It's because I feel that it's a very seductive process.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm sure that resonates with a lot of us in different ways. Does anybody else have anything they want
I
to
think-
share?
Well, you referenced specifically the pandemic, and I think just the real shocking changes have been just the changes in socializing and social structure in that way, right? So, so I teach high school, and I have amazing colleagues. I teach at this great prep school, and every one of my colleagues is top of the line, and I love spending time and working with them. And I find that always really fuels my art practice, and it just didn't happen this year. And those studio visits, you know, like I had the great fortune of meeting Danny when he moved to St. Pete as a resident artist at the Moran Center for Clay, and I met him because another fellow and I were doing crits with the new residents. So I kind of saw the first iteration of these performances. Danny, dude, you're killing it. We'll talk more later, but and none of that's happening either, you know. And that's really hard. My wife would ask me like, "How was work today?" Say, "Oh, you know, I talked to some high school kids for a while, but that's about it," you know. I have found it really isolating, and I found it, you know, I've kind of languished. I haven't worked to the extent that I want to, whether it's at my job or in my studio. The Skyway thing was really great because it was this huge goal that I had to think about, and then it got postponed, so that it was an even longer goal, and I got to go even harder for it. But it's been the first time I've ever done something on this scale that was really in isolation, sort of conversationally, completely. You know, I talked to almost nobody about what I was doing. I even backed off of Instagram for most of COVID, just found it kind of exhausting. So I wasn't even posting, you know, on social media and getting some of that feedback. So I feel like this was one of the first times I've ever produced something in this scale where I haven't had feedback from people that I trust, or you know, found inspiration outside of myself. I've had to dig a little deeper to get where I wanted to go with the work that I produced. So
Well, you did it, and you did it beautifully.
thanks.
I will say that I found this last 15 months or so to almost feel like a residency. I live alone. I think a lot of my artist friends found that it wasn't a lot different from their typical practice, because we all spend a lot of time alone just making the bodies of work that we make. However, living alone and practicing alone is not a very good combination. I moved to St. Pete from Miami about 3 years ago. The first 10 months that I was here, everything I owned was in storage. I was condo hunting, then I was condo renovating all myself. So by the time I moved in, it wasn't but about a year and a half later at the longest that COVID hit. When I first arrived and everything was in storage, I took a class at the Moran Center for Clay, because ceramics is something I've always been interested in, always purchased, always spent a lot of time observing. And boy, that bit me really hard. I fell in love with it. And several months into working out of the condo on my art practice is when COVID hit. And when COVID hit, Skyway got postponed. So I sort of said, okay, you can pretend to be a full-time ceramic student right now. And that's what I did for quite a few months. I just immersed myself daily for two reasons. I was so obsessed with it. But secondly, it provided me family and companionship, because here was this clay center populated with about 50 people, although many weren't coming in those early COVID months. It gave me community that I desperately needed. And that's an interesting world of artists also. I have to say that the ceramic world is a pretty helpful and giving and sharing space, probably because the medium is so challenging. Then I had to switch gears back to Skyway, which also was still at home and too isolating. So I ended up taking a studio in the middle of this last year and moving everything out of my condo and into a studio just so I could have room to properly work, and also at the same time be around other creatives. So I'm currently juggling 2 studios. It's not easy, but it's a bit of a tug of war, actually. My hope is that my newfound love of ceramics finds a way to dovetail and marry my traditional studio practice, and the two can become something powerful together. We'll see what happens, TBD.
That sounds great, Babette. I want to see that happen.
Thanks.
Danny, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, COVID's been really difficult, I would say. I mean, I'm lucky that didn't lose anyone or no one got really sick, but it's been like very hard to get to work. I would say it's been very distracting. It's hard to even kind of think about it as one thing. I think it's just like been this just like continuous long thing. But yeah, I mean, I didn't lose, but I was I was a resident at the Morning Sun for Clay and had to leave my studio in August. So I've been working out of a home studio for about a year now. Yeah, and it's been really hard to get to work. It's been really hard to stay motivated, I would say. Hopefully gets better. I don't know. Yeah.
Apparently,
It's a rough time.
Yeah.
apparently we are conforming exactly to the psychological definition of languishing, according to my guidance counselor friend. She sent it out to us, and I'm like, yeah, that's all of us right now, pretty much just biding our time.
Yeah,
So.
for sure.
Well, we did have one question that I think relates to the pandemic about for those of you that are working with found materials, did you notice any difference in what you were able to discover in your scavenging?
Apparently COVID has caused an international shortage of pom-poms. So yeah, if you want pom-poms, you should buy them before you need them. Yeah. Other than that, no, I mean, you know, I'm a little ashamed to say I'm like a huge user of Amazon Prime. I wish that I could see everything in person, but it was just too hard at one point. So, but I didn't have a lot of trouble doing found material stuff.
I can speak to a very interesting observation I made about the materials I tend to find on the street. And that is that in Miami, I found tons of material on the street that was worth picking up and using because it had a natural patina from rain and car traffic. When I moved to St. Pete, I found almost nothing on the street. Although it makes for living in a beautiful and clean city, it's pretty frustrating to know that even if I took my bike to the Pinellas Trail or through the warehouse district, I could not find trash. It's almost like every business was determined to keep every last little scrap from their own vicinity picked up. However, this pandemic sort of illustrates that perhaps city workers were also not on the job, because St. Pete's a lot dirtier today than it was 15 months ago. So I'm starting to find things on the street, which actually brings me some joy.
Very interesting.
You should check out the mangrove shorelines on Tampa Bay if you really want to find where all of our trash is.
I do feel like I have to go to Tampa. Where is this at now?
Oh no, I'll give you some parks we can go check out that are closer to where
Okay.
you live, and we'll find all the fancy trash that you could ever imagine.
Okay, well, before we open up to questions from the audience, although I snuck one in because it was about what we were talking about, I do have another question for you all. So many artists local artists have had the opportunity to exhibit independently and in dialogue with one another in shows across the region. But Skyway offers an expanded context for the work being made in this historic moment in our lives, as we were discussing. Would you speak to what being part of this exhibition of Skyway has meant to you?
It's meant really a great deal, and it follows from what I said before. I am now doing work that I've always dreamt of doing, large scale work with materials that I enjoy myself, and to find that my work was accepted, you know, by curators in two Skyway shows. It really, it was a very, very satisfying situation for me. So I'm very, very grateful about that.
Thank you.
So for me, it's about opportunity in the area where I live instead of trying to search around somewhere else. I love that we're doing this, that you guys are doing this, because it's really special. It's really special, and your community gets really excited for you. For me, it's about opportunity. So I have 2 young kids and I teach, so I already have like 2 full-time jobs. And when my kids were born, I was like, all right, my whole goal, I'll keep making no matter what, but it's to try and get one opportunity to make an installation that I want to make, just me, that's not for sale or not for anything else. And Skyway is definitely, I had a chance to do something like this at the Morian like 4 years ago. And then Skyway just opened it up to like, all right, it's going to be at a museum. It's going to be well publicized. It was everything I wanted for the installation I wanted to make, and none of the pressures to do anything that anybody else wanted me to do. Right? You never told me what to do at all. I gave you images. You guys saw the original installation, and you said, "Yeah, go nuts." And that was like a lot of trust, which was great, and just that opportunity. So this was kind of like I said, one of these a year, minus last year, obviously, and it's a big one that, like Akiko said, it's exciting to get the opportunity on this type of scale, and then to get the feedback that, oh, like it's beyond just what you wanted, other people wanted to see it as well. So
I think for me, Skyway is a chance to say hello, that I've moved here. It's a chance for me to meet the community that I have yet to meet because of being involved in this show. I also think it's amazing because it gives professional artists in the region venue. There isn't really a ton of venue here. So it's been hard to identify who's doing what since I arrived, and with COVID as an interruptive factor, this is for me finally a chance to really see who's behind the leaves on the tree. Because again, without a lot of venue, people find themselves needing to perhaps go outward to create careers. So hats off to the founders of Skyway and all the people who've worked hard to put it together, because it gives us a chance to meet each other, and it gives the community a chance to know what's happening in their own backyard.
Yeah, and it's nice to just see like the pride that the art community has, I think. And it's just nice to know that there's a lot of cool stuff happening. Like apart from being an artist in it, which is a total honor, just being a viewer at the other institutions and at this one, it's just, you just don't realize how much kind of great work is being made in the area around you. And that's just awesome. I mean, yeah, it's just good to see, for sure.
And
Yeah,
I'm sorry, Sarah, maybe you could answer this question. Do you feel that the Skyway has attracted artists to the area?
that's a really good question. I don't know if it's attracted them, like people moving here from elsewhere, but I would say that maybe some artists that maybe were thinking about leaving might consider staying because they see sort of like the breadth and depth and commitment to offering a platform for our local talent, in this, and sort of being able to have that manifest in a way that offers and fosters this exchange, more broadly for the region. I think if this obviously will continue, and it'll continue to build knowledge around it, especially, this is the second one, we're all just coming out of COVID, but I think the added interest will definitely expand. But I don't know about drawing people necessarily, to our region. I mean, maybe that's a question for Babette. I don't know if she was aware of the first one before she came, because that would have been about the same time.
No, it was just wrapping up when I arrived, so I never
Okay.
got to see it in person.
Okay.
But I specifically bought the catalog because before I came, I felt like I wasn't seeing work done at a level that I could communicate well with. but I knew because of the university system that there had to be terrific people doing terrific work here. So the catalog was my entry into finding some of those people. And so will this catalog. So it's creating a little bit of legacy and almost portfolio for the region.
Right.
I do
And
think
that's,
I think it starts to add importance though in areas with collectors that might be regional or statewide, and with things like the Florida Prize at University of, or at the Orlando Museum of Art. It helps bring spotlight to an area that doesn't have much spotlight and illustrates perfectly that yes, there's a lot happening here and people are sticking it out. It feels to me like Miami felt to me when I first moved there years ago. Pre-Basel, Miami also felt like the artists were a little bit underground and behind doors, and it was very entrenched in the university and museum world. But of course, now that it's gotten a lot larger, and so I hope it encourages people who might want to start a gallery to start a gallery, because look at the amount of work that's right in the back, their own backyard, that they could pull from to represent. And it's certainly going to help network the artists, and that's really important to building community.
yeah. And I think that's a good point. You know, the publication becomes such a valuable tool
Yeah.
for, you know, just a legacy of artists working in the region, and, you know, expanding connections between those artists, but also really important for collectors, you know, to see what's happening. And I think that's the part of the ecosystem, the collectors, fostering the collectors and fostering arts writing. That is a really important part of the ecosystem that we really want to bolster and help. It helps make a thriving community. So I'm seeing if we have any questions. We do have one question here. For all the artists, do you think it's still important to be represented by an art gallery?
Yeah. It'd be nice, I would say.
Nice, certainly wouldn't hurt.
Yes,
So
I
is
would say that, well, Babette and I are with articles, and it certainly focuses our attention on, you know, being able to sell our work. And I do this type of installation work, which obviously is not for sale. I mean, I can sell it to someone, but it's not really produced for that intention. But I also do quite a bit of drawing, ink work, smaller scale work, you know, stitching on hand woven canvases, and et cetera, et cetera. So I have a very long history of being able to do works for galleries. And also my early career, I did quite a bit of commissioned work. So I'm very familiar with all phases of, you know, selling my work. And right now, at this stage of my life, it's really a freedom for me to just do absolutely what I want to do. It's wonderful.
I mean, I think having a gallery as a way to show your work is maybe not like 100% necessary now. I mean, you can open up galleries in your garage. I mean, Instagram's a powerful tool. What I think is really nice about a good gallery is that it's someone who is trying to sell your art,
Yes.
and whose job it is to sell your art. And a lot of times it's hard to do that. I mean, that's a hard kind of task.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you've got people that are basically, you know, working for you to connect you with clients and collectors that they have long relationships with, and that often they, you know, trust.
Right.
And so there's a real, you know, it's just a larger network too. Okay, let me see. We've got another question here from Karen Frank. As artists, do you feel like your connections with other artists and the general public, for that matter, have become strengthened now that we've gone through the pandemic, and we are becoming more enlightened by enhanced discussions on social justice issues. So do you feel-
That's a heavy duty question. You know, I love, just as a human, talking to everybody about their life experiences, and I feel much more comfortable asking or discussing with friends that are somehow marginalized, people of color, whatever, about what their experience is. And I think that it's not such a loaded sort of situation to say, ask a gay man what sort of discriminations have you faced, right? Because I'm deeply curious. I don't mean walk up to you on the street and be like, hey dude, let's talk, but I just feel more comfortable having open conversations and dialogue with people that aren't the same as me. And as a cis hetero white guy like that, having that door open to be able to ask some of those questions is really nice, because I'm deeply interested and want to understand. I don't know. Yeah, I guess my connections with other artists have become strengthened. Yes, I just answered that question.
For me, definitely. I mean, I know how I felt without contact with artists during the pandemic, and I really suffered. I was not aware of how much I enjoyed interacting with artists, just to talk to them, just very common everyday questions, but inevitably we tend to focus on our work, about art, about are you selling your work? I mean, even the most mundane kinds of conversations is very, very helpful, and it's wonderful to hear how artists are really doing their work. Are they achieving what they want to do? How are they approaching their life with all the obstacles of becoming an artist? It is very tough to be and to keep being an artist in our society, because it is not valued. So definitely, I am so happy to be just here talking to you, and to having an audience hear us speak. I think it's a wonderful thing.
And I do think that's something that did kind of come out of the pandemic, was a sort of turn to the arts. Like, people, I think, really needed the arts. And I do think that there was maybe it wasn't, a sort of monetary value, but there was a genuine appreciation and sort of commitment and need to turn to the arts during this time. And I think that really emphasizes the importance of artists and their role in our society, and their voice, and their bringing things to the surface and allowing us to see things, to see difference, to appreciate difference, to explore new perspectives and challenge ourselves. So
I think a lot of what happened during the pandemic, certainly for me, was a distillation of what's important. And I think that that's what we saw happen on the streets, that people decided often through tragedy, that we were tired of oppressing what's important. And what's important, of course, is fairness and beauty and essential joy. So hopefully we'll see some resolution and amplification of some of these voices and things that we've all clamored for during this time rise and begin to overshadow some of the difficulties we've all had.
So I don't see any more questions in the chat. There's a few comments that I'll read for our viewers. Babette, I appreciate you sharing your clay connection experience. I love my clay family, which I'm grateful to say is vast. I look forward to seeing what you create and how the love for it grows. And that's from Kimberly Cummings.
Thank you.
And Babs Reingold. Hi, Babs. She says, hi, everyone. Congratulations on the exhibition. This is not a question, but I wanted to say as a fellow artist, it's a pleasure to listen to all of you talk about your work and meet new artists in the St. Petersburg area. Good luck with the exhibition. I imagine that you all can see these comments in the chat as well. Danny, there's some for you. Katie Dietz says, thanks to the artists for talking about their work and to the Contemporary Art Museum for presenting the very interesting program with revealing insights. I look forward to seeing the exhibition. It's great to see the work of these artists, all of whom I've been familiar with, and it's interesting to see their progression. Thank you, Katie. And there's a few more comments for Casey.
May I ask a question to you, Sarah?
Sure.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
I'm very curious as to, you chose the work for the museum, and it is highly, material, made of matter, and you chose things that, as you stated in some places, that transcend. And I just wanted to know your thoughts about your choice of, the artist in the museum.
Well, I was just really excited by all of your work, and I'm always excited about process and materiality and sort of that transformation and kind of how artists are able to, really transform the way that we look at certain things. And so, we were able to expand the show, which I thought was actually a really great thing that came out of the postponement, was that we were able to, occupy the whole museum. And so I was really excited to have the works be in dialogue with one another and the layout and kind of explore some of those formal and just, the formal dialogues within the work, and thinking about the different artists' approach and kind of, their material concerns and how they were articulating those kinds of things. I mean, it just so happened that we got this kind of Morian contingency of this group of the Morian artists. But, we did have a few parameters when we were selecting works. So, for example, we were trying to do this kind of geographic exchange. So not showing artists that were based in Tampa. So really trying to provide artists an area for new exposure, but also if you had been in Skyway before, you weren't going to be able to show at the same institution. So that was like another sort of parameter that we placed when we were selecting the work, as well as because we're based at USF, we really tried to expand the artists that we were working with so that they weren't USF affiliated, recent alum, faculty, or related to the university. So, we all kind of worked on a way, and I just kind of gravitated toward this idea of materiality and process when we were starting to sort of, pick who we were going to be able to work with. And so it's just been a real pleasure to be able to work with all of you, especially during this extended time. I felt like we kind of got to, tough it out a little bit together, as sort of like check in, be like, hey, is everything going okay? Here's some updates, about what's happening, because for a while there, we didn't know what was happening. We didn't know when we were sort of going to be able to kind of ramp things back up. But yeah, so I hope that answers your question.
I have a comment. For me, our preview last week was really special. It was the first time I ever attended a group exhibition that was so intimate. Typically it's filled with family, friends, collectors, whomever, but it was so amazing just to be there. And this was COVID related and COVID induced, with such a small group, just the creators, the curators, the people, the supporters in the community that made a lot of this happen. But it was intimate and wonderful to have a chance to talk to everyone about their work and not be interrupted by the hoopla of a typical opening. So if there's any way to do that in the future, I strongly suggest it. I think it builds bridges.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. You know, it's often like those conversations are such a important part. And I think that's what we're realizing too about how social sort of like a lot of what our business is a very social activity. And so to have that sort of like more intimate experience was very welcome.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. So before we wrap up for the evening, I do want to encourage everyone that we will be having another artist talk with our other 4 artists from Skyway, Ryan McCullough, Rosemary Chirlone, Cynthia Mason, and Cody Thompson on Thursday, July 1st. So that's 2 weeks from today. It'll be on Zoom again, Instagram and Facebook, 6 p.m. And also we will be having an in-person closing reception for the show on Friday, August 27th. And so I hope you will all come out for that. It'll be sort of our first back to face-to-face event of a large scale as the semester starts in the fall. And so really looking forward to seeing you all there. And hopefully again soon. So thank you all for joining tonight. Thank you to our artists for being so forthright and sharing. And I appreciate it. Great to
Thank
see
you.
you all.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.